Hey folks, Shaw here with Royal Tiger Imports, and look who we have with us today. It's Matt LaRosier from Fuddbusters and other ventures as well. And look what Matt brought over for us. We got some really cool BM59s. Of course, these are, tell me a little bit more about them, Matt. You know a little bit more than I do on these particular guns you got.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Italian firearms. It's kind of an interest that suddenly emerged in me, and I've always liked the M1. And this represents a really interesting moment in history where a lot of countries around the world had M1 Garands, and all at the same time, they were like, these are great. I want to shoot .308, and I like magazines. Right? And so, of course, the US had that, and we had a lot of different experimental Garands that were mag-fed, and that sort of culminated in the M14, right? It's not exactly a mag-fed Garand, but it went on from that project. And interestingly, around the same time, we have the Italians doing the same thing. So these are just really cool guns to compare with the M14. And we'll kind of go over some of the features on them, but I'll just point out the differences between this and the M14 real quick. These use a Garand receiver, okay, that is substantially modified. We'll show you some of those modifications in just a minute. But we've also got a Garand-style gas block. Now, it might be hard to notice that right away because of the way that it looks, but we've got a Garand-style straight op rod. We don't have the fake M14 gas system that we wound up with on the M14, right? But the biggest claim to fame of the M14, in my opinion, is they shaved half a pound off the gun, right? That's substantial. And you know, it's pretty laudable for that. They did not shave half a pound off of this. The BM59 is 9.7 pounds. However, there's a lot of things on it that make me prefer the BM59 over the M14. For one, almost every iteration of the BM59 had a compensator integrated. This, of course, is the ITAL, right, which is the most common version that the Italians used forever, but it has the integrated tri-comp, which is a compensator, grenade launcher, and bayonet lug, and flash hider, right? Does everything. And, of course, integrated gas shutoff so that you can shoot all of the rifle grenades that you totally have stockpiled up. They also use a standard M1 Garand handguard and a mostly normal M1 Garand stock that they tortured heavily to make room for all of their modifications. The most interesting thing about the BM59 military rifle is that it was select fire, and they did this basically by adding a switch to it, right? So the whole BM59 automatic assembly was an external skeleton that kind of went onto the right-hand side of the gun and would go up through this hole and grab onto the front of the op rod to basically operate as your auto catch. These don't have that, right? But these were made in the same way that the original BM59s would have been made. And what that was is a post-war Garand receiver where only a few modifications are performed, which is really interesting. So, of course, we've had to open up the bottom of the clip well and mill out the inside of this. So these were milled out and then reparked. Then a key seat is cut into the front of the receiver to enable this. And what this is a forward magazine catch. These have two magazine catches, which is kind of interesting. And if you ever use an M14 or an M1A, you know that getting the mag in, changing mags is kind of a nightmare. These shapes on the BM59 receiver and this front spring-loaded catch make it so you can just send the magazine straight in, and these shapes make it so you can send it in at almost any angle. If you put it into the receiver and give it a slap, it's going to go home, period, which is a really cool thing about the BM59. The other change is here on the side, where originally this is where you get your Garand clip latch, and this is, for the most part, abandoned in the M14, but in the BM59, that same geometry is kept here and opened up slightly, and you can see it's textured on both sides. That's because this operates as both a bolt hold open, where you can push this down, hold the bolt back, and hold it open, and also a last round bolt hold open, where you can slap the side of the receiver to send it home. Super cool. We've got an integrated bipod, of course, as well as your grenade launching devices. And these have BM59 rear sights, which are just Garand sights that have a BM59 marking on them. The trigger area is where we have a lot of other interesting modifications. So this is a basically Garand trigger mechanism where they've added in a winter trigger, which folds down, and that, being as silly as it is still pretty cool, as well as a magazine catch. So that's your rear magazine catch that you actually engage on. There are other little bits and bobs, right, that are unique to the BM59 here, but aside from that, the Garand fire control, of course, you don't need your ejector, your clip ejector, and this one being a Beretta-made housing doesn't even have the hole for the clip ejector to go in. Most of these that you'll see will be a repurposed US-made one housing that still has that hole in it. But ostensibly, these are a 308 M1 Garand. And the nice advantage that has is that you have the full receiver length of the 30-06 Garand. So the recoil impulse is very soft because you get basically an extra ½ inch of bolt travel for free. They're sprung very well, they're gassed very well, and the tri-comp really makes a huge difference. These are remarkably flat shooting guns, and they do not jump. You know, of course, it's a 308, it's a substantial amount of blast, but they are so easy to keep on target that they've really become my favorite 308 rifle all around. And so that's why I'm glad to bring these that were done exactly the way, aside from adding the full auto stuff, you know, with the right US parts and everything, to bring a BM59 that is going to work exactly the way that it was supposed to.
And overall, these are really, really slick. Like you said, I mean, these are done as right as they can be at this point. I mean, even down to the overstamp markings and the addition of the markings just behind the rear sight there. Let's get a closer look at those while we got it in front of us. I mean, the attention to detail is fantastic on these. These are refinished receivers, of course, and overall, I mean, they're just real Cadillacs to shoot. You know, I've got a BM59E, which is your much longer, more traditional to the Garand, you know, style with your front handguard, no, you know, gas shut off, etc. And that thing is extremely nice to shoot. You know, it's a slightly different muzzle on it. You know, it's a similar idea with a compensator, but a different you know, style of how it's produced. That being said, I imagine that this particular one is also quite nice. I mean, like you mentioned, the bolt travel having, you know, it's not like an M14 receiver where most people don't realize an M14 receiver is physically shorter than a Garand receiver. And as a result, your bolt has barely enough travel to pick up that next cartridge. Yeah, it's definitely much shorter bolt travel than this is, being with the 308 conversion. So really slick guns. I mean, these are with new barrel, reparkerized receiver, mostly original finish on all the other components. The other components are in astonishingly, you know, pretty great shape. You know, no cracks in the stocks. I mean, these are just wonderful shooting guns. They are test fired, ready to go. So we can't wait to, you know, have these available. But these are really, really slick. So thanks again for bringing these by, and you know, keep posted to what we do online and our website. Thank you very much for watching. God bless.